Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review See How They Run. So, this is a whodunit movie that is to deliver it by using comedy. And so, I actually thought that this movie was good. I liked it. I would recommend people seeing it. You're not going to go in and like laugh out loud like, oh my god, this movie, ha ha ha. But there are some pretty good gags in this movie, and I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. And so, what is this film about? In more specifics, so come to find out, we have this play that is to be called The Mousetrap that seems to be going well. So well, in fact, that they want to turn around and have this Agatha Christie play being turned into this movie. And so it seems that we have at first a director of this film named Leo, who has never seen the play, knows nothing about it. But like basically, when you know that it's a whodunit kind of play, you're like, oh yeah, I know how this goes. Like I know like traditionally what they do in these kinds of films, and so why should I just go on and need to see another whodunit, because like it's all the same. So Leo will go on and break a whodunit down in the beginning of the film, but then he'll also turn around and have us meet up with a number of people who could possibly be in suspicion of being a murderer. As we go throughout this film, and we start to have people who are somehow tied to the mousetrap, who are starting to get killed off. And the real interesting thing is, when we get close to the end, it feels like they were like giving us something unique, but then they turn around and go right back to like the classic cliche way to end a whodunit kind of film. And I was like, man, like the kind of the twist this movie was actually really interesting. But then, like, when they finally deliver the ending, I was like, oh, okay, well. Plus, also, through, like, the middle of this movie, there's a lot of just busy work. There's a lot of just questioning people and having to give us pieces of story that we didn't see prior to certain people's deaths. And we, of course, give some comedic parts. When we go on, we have Marvin Cocker Norris, who is to go on and talk about like how they were going to write this movie. Like, I thought that was kind of really funny. When we have Marvin, who is breaking down what they were thinking about doing in the film, and I thought that was funny. I thought that was hilarious. That was the best part of the movie. So we have a play that is to also lead into people being killed because of a movie being made. So, like, it's kind of all over the place, but I also thought it was kind of hilarious when we both had these two detectives that just go into this environment, and it's like, well, yeah, it looks like there was a struggle here, and somebody must have gotten murdered, but who is the person who got murdered? Oh, yeah, that person over there. Wait a minute, what? Yeah, that person that's just standing, or just sitting over there. It's like, okay. So with that said, where can you go on and watch See How They Run besides a theater? Obviously, there are some apps that you can go on and watch a bootleg version of this movie, just in case if you want to sample this movie and not have to go on and pay a price tag to be able to actually see it, because maybe you're still on the fence, even when I am to talk about it here, and to say that I enjoyed it. I thought that this was a fun whodunit kind of film. Um, like I was really happy that it gave like a comedy approach to this because I'm like, thank God. So this isn't gonna be like another boring whodunit kind of thing. Because we of course had stuff like Death on the Nile um, and Orient Express and stuff like that. That's like just a straightforward, boring story where it's like, come on, like let's really get to the killers. Let's really get to this. Let's really get to that. And also, Death in the Nile focused way too much on Gal Gadot, where it was like, dang, like how much screen time can Gal Gadot have in this movie? But anyways, so let's go on. So the apps. The first off app that I would recommend for people is Box UHD. So that's Box and then that's UHD. Hopefully this is still available on a Google Play Store. If not, I'd recommend to just Google search it, and hopefully you can be able to find this app, download it, and be able to see how they run the bootleg version currently right now for absolutely free. Until Premium Access comes out, and then you can see a way better, cleaner version of this movie. You can also go onto a Google Play Store and just search the word Yes Movies. And there should be a Yes Movies app still available on a Google Play Store, and hopefully you'll be able to see how they run via that app. And then at some point when this app does come on to Premium Access, I would also recommend an app called Doxy, DOXCY, Doxy, and then hopefully you'll be able to see this movie when it comes on Premium Access. I know that's a bit of a wait, but also you can see a number of movies on Doxy that you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. Because I've gone on to see a number of movies lately that is on that app. So, with that said, would recommend this movie. Check it out. It's really fun. I liked it. It's not really side-splitting comedy like you're like, oh my god, ha 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 ha, like you're gonna be like laughing out of the theater, or your side's gonna hurt from all the laughing you're gonna do. But like, but there's some chuckle moments. There's some good laughs. There's some good moments in this film. So with that said, let's go on and let's double five. It's about that time to go into what, of course, is to be more spoiler time. It's about the time to spoil this movie. At some point in the middle, I'm just gonna really just plop things down. Just kind of go on to like, okay, let's do this scene and let's do this and let's focus on that and let's go. Like there's so much to just kind of chuck in the middle there. I'm just gonna try to just get everything done and do all that. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, let's go into this. So, at the very beginning, we of course are to show this theater that is showing the mousetrap. So, we have Leo Kopernik, who is to break down to you how a whodunit is to usually be, how the format usually is. And so, we normally have a group of people all lumped in together, and at some point they are all, or at some point someone is going to say, like, oh, this person was murdered. And all of a sudden the detective comes in, and at some point then he regroups all these people back together and is to come up with a conclusion of who the murderer really was, and normally it would be the least likely person. Or, even though all these people probably all had motives, the one guy that was just, like, couldn't even tie his shoes that day is to probably just be the murderer. Because it makes all the sense in the world. So, now that Leo had gone on to break down a normal whodunit, as if no one has ever seen this kind of genre before, we then have Leo, who is to explain that he is going to be the director of this Mousetrap film, and that he is to, of course, never seen one lick of this play, but since he knows, like, the whodunit genre, like, he should be able to easily just direct this movie without ever needing to actually see the play. And so, we turn from the theater to then make our way to this party as Leo is to celebrate with all these people who have gone on and seemingly done a mass number of plays, and they at some point will want to go on and do so much more. So because we of course have like Richard Attenborough, um, and we of course have Sheila Sims, who I guess are to own this theater, and they're very rich. And we of course have Richard, who's going on and making this speech, and Sheila's telling Richard, it's like, well, hey, like, don't put too many words in it. You don't want to strain yourself or put too much effort into this. So Richard is to go on and toast that it's like, yeah, like 100 and on to 100 more. So we have Leo, who is to make his way through certain people, as Leo is to have a producer who is John Wolfe, who seems to have a very suspicious wife, who is to kind of turn and be like, hey, like, is death going to happen? And John is like, hey, like, just calm down. Come to find out, John is to have a second wife, and that's his second wife, because John is to move on and want to remarry with another woman. And so, but we have Leo. And so Leo is to talk about the writer of this movie that is trying to adapt this this theater play into a film. And so, come to find out, Marvin Cocker Norris is to be this kind of a prick. He's a hard guy to deal with. And so Leo, of course, who is to be asking Marvin, like, hey, how's the play going? And Marvin is like, oh, God, like I won't put up with this anymore. Like, I'm going to go on and like I'm gonna leave and go over there, and so Leo is just like, okay, so he's gonna go on and put up with me over there, I guess. So and come to find out, Mervyn is to be upset with Leo because Leo wants there to be a death right away in the film, and Mervyn is just like, well, that doesn't work that way. Like, you got to go on and like build it up and so on and so. Like, they're having confliction of like what to do with the film, and so Leo has his own ideas that has nothing to do with the play. But so we have Leo, who is also to meet up with the Sims and see that their family is to all be there. And Agatha Christie, it seems, is to be a woman who is to be heavily into fish, to where she's running off because she ends up seeing some like some fish being served, and Leo is telling her, hey, yeah, like, look at that fish over there. So we have Leo, who ends up getting alone with, of course, Sheila Sims. And we have them both talking, and that all of a sudden leads to Richard being upset with Leo, kind of trying to get with his woman. And so Richard is to kind of like put him up and want to fight this guy. And so Richard ends up mentioning like how he was to get his combat training, and how Richard was to go to a gym and get some combat training. And Leo, of course, is joking about his combat training. And so, come to find out, Richard ends up punching Leo. He ends up falling back onto this table. And so Leo now needs to clean himself off. And so he's going to the back of this theater to look for a new wardrobe. And so all of a sudden we have Leo, who is to see this dummy, and he is to kind of like smack the hat off of it, just be like, okay, like, because he's hearing somebody, and he's like, okay, like, what is this? Like, where is this sound coming from? So Leo is to kind of smack this dummy and have the hat fall off, and then all of a sudden we have this guy come out of the shadows, and he, of course, is wearing uh, like the same similar clothes as this detective here, where he has his like top hat and trench coat and all of this stuff. So, come to find out, we have the uh, the killer who is wearing all these clothes, and he is trying to kill Leo with this uh, like this like skiing item, this like when you would go on, you would put your feet in these skis, like he's like the killer is killing him with these skis. So come to find out, the killer ends up also taking out this guy's tongue, oddly, and they end up finding it afterwards, or finding that out afterwards. So we then cue both Constable Stalker and Inspector Stoppard. And so Stalker, it seems, is going to be up soon for the detective exam. And so Constable Stalker is kind of asking Inspector Stoppard for tips. And so it seems like he's not really giving her any. And so we have Constable Stalker and Inspector Stoppard, who make their way to this theater to then go up on stage and realize, it seems, that there has been a struggle. And they're like, well, obviously somebody's murdered here. And Constable Stalker is like, well, yeah, Inspector, the person who was murdered here was, of course, Mrs. Boyd, or Mrs. No, wait, Mrs. Boyle, and she's sitting right over there. And Inspector Stoppard is like, well, she made a pretty good recovery. And Constable Stalker is like, well, yeah, because this is a set that's for a play, and like this woman wasn't really murdered. But Constable Stalker hasn't seen the whole play yet, and so Stoppard is like, oh, okay, all right. So they go on and they find the actual person who legitimately got murdered, and it was Leo, and he was killed in a different area, but then like presented by the stage. So they're like, oh, okay, all right. So like we have to figure out who could have had motive to kill this person. So we, of course, have the first thing that they go on and do is they start questioning the people at the theater. And so they end up questioning this one usher, who's Dennis Corrigan. It's like, well, hey, like you might have seen the killer. Like, what did he look like? And so Dennis is to go on and say, it's like, well, like he looked like average height. He looked like an average man, and like all of this stuff that leads nowhere. And they're just like, oh, okay, great, all right. So that led them nothing. And so we have Constable Stoppard and Stalker who go on to question guys like the manager of the place where Leo was staying at. And come to find out, Leo's room, none of the maids go on and clean it because they refuse. And so it just seems like this whole room is just trashed. So Stepard and Stalker ends up asking the hotel manager, it's like, well, hey, like, have you ever heard any arguments that Leo was to have up here? Is there a whole reason why, like, they won't go on and have these maids, like, clean this room, even if they're to get paid well? And so the manager ends up mentioning an argument had by both Leo and Mervyn, that during this conversation, Mervyn ends up being so upset with Leo that he threatens that he's going to kill him. And it seems that we find out throughout this movie that Constable Stalker is to write every single thing down. Everything. And Constable Stepard is to be asking Stalker, it's like, well, like, why are you writing everything down? And she's like, well, like, just until the point where, like, I won't think that I'll need to write everything down. And so he's like, well, then you're just going to write everything down. All right. So Stalker and Stepard are to just be like, well, that sounds like almost like a confession that Marvin is to kill Leo, so like this case should be quickly wrapped up soon. So they go on to meet with Mervyn, who I guess is to have a lover who is to be this kind of foreign character who has this accent, and we have at one point where Mervyn is to say to this guy, it's like, well, hey, like, could you like be less of an angry like accented person or whatever? And so I don't remember what like place that this guy was from. So when Mervyn is talking to these two constable and inspectors, it seems that his lover of Mervyn's leaves him, and so Mervyn is to consistently say that it's like a relative of his or a friend of his or something like that, but it obviously should be a lover. So Mervyn goes on to explain to these inspectors and constables that they had a discussion about how this movie was to be played out. And so we had, of course, the moment where Leo wanted there to be flashbacks in the movie, and Marvin is like, no, like, flashbacks are awful, as they go on and they flashback a number of scenarios where Leo and Marvin are together, and then Marvin's just like, well, yeah, like, and you know what, like, Leo wanted that was even worse? Like, he possibly wanted us to go to do something that is to be, like, as bad as, like, 3 weeks later. And then all of a sudden the movie, it's like 3 weeks earlier. So we had Marvin and we had Leo. Or I think I said 3 weeks later and I meant 3 weeks earlier. So 3 weeks earlier. So we had Leo and we had Marvin, who is pitching to John Wolfe about this film. And so Leo had this like storyboarding idea where he is like flipping these papers all the time and showing this little scene where we have these two detectives, and come to find out, one of them is to lose bullets in their gun, and so at one point one of the inspectors dies and the other goes on and like kind of holds them and is to like comfort them as they are to die. And like they end up doing this whole action sequence and stuff that ends up playing almost identically the way that the movie ends at some point or stops. And so Leo's really going into this like whole storyboarding thing, and we have one random point where he just drew some woman, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, like I'm sorry about that." So Leo is storyboarding this whole entire scene and really getting into it, and they're just like, "Yeah, that sounds really good," but so it seems that Leo is taking hefty amount of liberties in this film because he just wants certain scenes to be done. So we shift to Marvin, who, of course, after like explaining all this, it seems that the constable and the inspector don't buy that Marvin is to possibly be the killer. Uh, but it seems that also the constable and the inspector are to possibly realize that if Leo was to get killed in this theater, that there may lead to a number of victims that might happen somewhere down the road. So we go on to, of course, have more people being questioned along the way. We have John Wolf, who is to get questioned, and come to find out the main thing that they kind of focus on is that Wolf is getting remarried to this woman, as John Wolf is begging his newer wife, who is Anne, for them to go on a date, and so they go on one, and so it seems that we are to also like showcase that these people are getting married soon, so on and so forth. So we also have a moment where we have Leo, who is talking to this couple, and there seems to be some suspicious moment that is to be like, well, hey, you're going to do this or else. And then it just stops right there. So we go on and we start questioning certain actors, as we, of course, have Richard, who is being questioned here. And they are to like talk about how Richard had gone on to fight Leo and that he could be fairly suspicious about him. And so Richard is going on and asking, of course, how this Inspector Stepard ended up getting this limp, because it's obvious. Like, we have Richard, who is to go on and ask, who is to go on and ask Stepard here if he ended up getting this injury in the war, and Richard is thinking that he could probably use that in some part of the theater, so that way the play could be just a little bit different. So, because I guess it doesn't really matter like what they use, they can just kind of throw things in at any moment. So come to find out, even with the fight between this couple, like it doesn't seem enough that they could tie Richard in to kill Leo either. And so now they're just kind of waiting for the next murder to happen. And so what ends up happening is we go on to have this play being done, and we have Mervyn, who is talking to the usher and stating that Marvin would like to take this guy's whole life story and make a movie out of it. And the usher's like, oh, great. So, come to find out, during a part of this play, Mervyn is to leave, and come to find out, we had the constable and the inspector who had made their way to this play, and they seemed to be at odds with one another. Because the constable is to start putting the pieces together that it seems somehow that Leo had this wife named Joyce, and the constable is possibly putting it together that the inspector was to also be married previously, and and the wife that he was with was 8 months pregnant with some other guy's baby, and Joyce had told the inspector about this, and so come to find out, we have the constable that is to think that that is very suspicious. So as they go on and they like describe, or as the constable is to see a picture of Joyce, and after both the constable and the inspector go out for drinks, and the inspector ends up getting so drunk that he has to basically be carried into his house by the constable, and that's of course when the constable ends up seeing this photo of Joyce and the inspector getting married. So they make it to this play, and so the constable is to find out at some point that Mervyn had gotten murdered. He had gotten killed. And so it seems that at this point, we had the constable who was chasing this murderer and chasing him around, and come to find out with all this runaround, we had the constable who accidentally smacks the inspector with the shovel and knocks him unconscious, and then they go on and arrest the inspector, and then they end up telling him, it's like, well, like it seems that the constable is to figure out that that Leo's previous wife was to possibly be connected to the inspectors. And that's the motive that the inspector had to kill this man. So, to kill Leo. And then Mervyn was just to make it seem that it wasn't like just a one-off killing. So, we come to find Joyce somehow, and then Joyce makes her way to this prison cell, and come to find out this Joyce is not to be the inspector's wife, but this is to be the Joyce that is somehow connected to Leo, because they had to go on and find her. And so, come to find out, while Stalker and Joyce are starting to talk here, we then start to realize that who the killer actually is. And so, all while the inspector is all putting the pieces together also, and he is to kind of see this old newspaper clipping. And so, now we have all these people that are to make it to this party, that they were very, like, oddly weirded out by the fact that they were even invited to this party. So, we have this guy named Max Mallowan, who is to go on and open his door to a plethora of different actors who are all to work on this play, and Agatha Christie and everybody. And so Max is to go on and say, like, well, I didn't know we were having a party, and so on and so forth. So, like, hey guys, just come on in. And so like, I can't just leave you guys in the cold, so just, like, come on, let's go and have this get together. So all of a sudden it leads to these guys having this get together, kind of questioning things, but they're all waiting for somebody to come in, and that of course is Max's wife. So it's like, okay, so like we're waiting on her to finally get done, and so on and so forth. So sorry about all these adjusting. So come to find out, this is of course when the real killer is to get revealed. And come to find out, this killer was none other than the Usher character. And so that was Dennis Corrigan. Because Stalker was to talk to Joyce and was to mention how this guy had like a way about talking, and Stalker was like, well, did he have an accent? And she was like, no, like he sounded kind of like an idiot. So Stalker immediately, when saying like, oh, I know who sounded like an idiot, it was obviously that Usher guy. So, and then we have also the inspector who is to put the pieces together also, and come to find out, Stalker was to call the precinct to get this certain address, and when the inspector was to call, uh, it seems that the officer was to confirm that Stalker had already called for this certain address, and the inspector's like, okay, well, I'll just follow her because she knows what I know. So, come to find out, we now have this guy who is to try and kill off all these people because Dennis was to have his story being portrayed on this theater. That this play was adapted from his real life story, and he had to go on to be the usher and watch it every single night, and he is to be upset how the story isn't even right. It's not even correct. And so Dennis is to now go after Agatha Christie and try and kill her off here, and go after everybody tied to this whole thing. So we go on to, of course, have the inspector and Stalker arrive to then try to, of course, take down Dennis. And what ends up happening is they end up putting together this certain kind of Molotov cocktail that they end up chucking into this room because, of course, Dennis is holding on to a hostage. And so the inspector has this gun, and he's like, okay, I don't think I can go on and shoot because I'm worried that I'm going to not hit Dennis, I'm going to hit the hostage. So they end up tossing this Molotov cocktail, which has Dennis release this hostage. We then have, of course, the inspector that shoots Dennis multiple times, but it doesn't seem that it's good enough to have done a killing blow here. And so we have a moment where then Dennis is going to fire. He's going to shoot. So Constable is to try to dive out of the way to try and go on to prevent her inspector from getting shot, or dive into like saving him. And so we then find out that Dennis ends up getting hit with something to knock him out. So Stalker and Stepard, come to find out, we are to think that Stalker was to get shot. But then she's like, no, I don't feel anything. And she's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's a whole reason why I don't feel anything. it's maybe because I didn't get shot, maybe you did. So Stepard is to kind of open up his coat to realize he got shot in the arm, and so like we're assuming that Stepard is going to die here, and come to find out, no. So cue the detectives getting their man and solving their case, and so we then turn around and have Inspector Stepard ending up getting an award for this, and he is having his arm in a sling, and Constable Stalker ends up going on to ace her detective's or her inspector exam, and we then go on and have the play continuing to just go on because it's so massively successful, and basically without or with this case in the news, I'm sure that were to promote this play, pushing it to then have this play continue go on for even longer, and them not put together this film. So I think at some point we do try to have the inspector and the constable, or both the detectives and whatever, go on to see this full play. But anyways, that ends up going on to wrap up this thing. We also had, at one point in this movie, we had Stepard, who was having this kind of dream sequence, and the dream sequence led him to meet up again with Leo, and the inspector is to weirdly say that he like doesn't have pants on, and so the inspector is talking to Leo, and the inspector is mentioning that like he is involved in a murder case. And Leo's like, oh yeah, well, like who died? And the inspector is like, well, you did. And so Leo's like, oh, well, like, was anybody sad that I died? And so the inspector is like, oh, well, not really, or something like that. And Leo's like, oh, okay. So Leo tries to run off because he is to possibly put the pieces together. And so Leo is trying to make it back into this theater because he has a ticket for this play, and the usher is to say, it's like, well, where's your ticket? And he's like, well, I have it, but it's like in my other pants, like I don't have pants on. And as they wake up, as the inspector wakes up, he's in jail, possibly being tied to these murders, as they kind of assume that he could have been the culprit because of the Joyce connection. But come to find out, that wouldn't be the case. So yeah. So with that, I think I've kind of gone on in a very roundabout way, talking what ends up and putting the pieces together, what happens in this film. But yeah, like there was just a lot of stuff that I just kind of quickly went through and kind of paraphrased and whatever. So go on and check out this movie. There's a lot of just going on into it. So with that said, I'm going to just get the heck out of here. Oh, we had the whole scene where the constable and the inspector were to be in a car together, and we had the constable who is to kind of mention how, like, yeah, she realizes that she talks a lot, and like a lot of people probably don't want to work with her. And when we have the inspector who just goes on to be like, you know what, like, I'm gonna go on and I need to leave because I'm having a dentist appointment, and he ends up going into this bar, and so when the constable is to kind of check in on the inspector, she then realizes that the inspector is to go into this bar, and like the constable is to ask, like, well, wait a minute, like you went into a bar, and the inspector is like, well, yeah, like I went into the bar after had went to this dentist appointment and just had one drink, and the constable is just like, okay, all right. No, this guy just went into a bar and like that's all he did. So so at some point the constable covers for him and is to just continue to buy the story of like, oh yeah, he went to this dentist appointment and now he has this mint, and like the constable doesn't go on and correct him at some point, even though really like because they're partners now technically. So yeah, so with that said, I'm just gonna go on and just get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about See How They Run. This one was very difficult to try to talk about this and just review all this. So with that said, I'm gonna go on and just get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.